a toast to Derek Beackon, who gave us so much hope 30 years ago. Derek Beackon. Well done, Derek. Hooray! Welcome everybody here. All those that have travelled a long way. We've got people from Yorkshire. Thank you very much for giving up your time to celebrate the 30th anniversary of that iconic event in London, Millwall, 16th of September 1993, when the British National Party shocked the establishment by getting their first councillor elected. And that councillor and that iconic individual is with us tonight, Mr. Derek Beackon. I think we should thank the venue as well. I think the food was excellent. You know, a big thank you to the venue. But there are two people we've got to thank for this dinner occurring tonight. It was the idea of James Rayton. Thank you, James, who kicked it off. And then Jane Lombard, who, as you all know, she's emailed everyone. She's done a lot of work behind the scenes to get this to where we are tonight. So, Jane, fantastic. We've got a couple of speakers who were in the heat of the battle of Millwall. We're going to hear from, and it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Steve Smith.
A date to remember is 30 years ago, and I remember the votes being recounted, because there was a couple of recounts and we won by 7 votes. It was the culmination of 4 years hard work and political intelligence as well. Rights for whites, and then those magical words from our friend over there. To quote Derek, the British people have had enough of being treated as second-class citizens in their own country. We're going to take our country back. Wonderful stuff. And those words didn't just reverberate around the British media, they reverberated around the world. It was a brilliant political victory, not just for the British National Party, but also for the British people. Praise obviously goes towards Derek for his integrity and his courage, for my old colleague as well, Eddy Butler, for sophisticated political planning over years. It wasn't just something that we did out of the blue. It took us a long time to get to that stage, and also for the rest of our team, of which I was very proud to be a part. The election occurred at a key point in time because the old National Front, which was the premier nationalist party for a long time, certainly throughout the 1970s, had effectively died in the mid-80s at some point. And this is before the BNP successes of the early part of the millennium. So we was in the middle. And with this tremendous success, we revived British nationalism. The party name was well known in the borough where we lived in Tower Hamlets by the end of 1990. By the end of 1993, it was known throughout the world as well as Britain itself. The reaction of the British media was astonishing. Their collective OTT response gave us more publicity than we anticipated, and yet it was one single seat amongst thousands. Some of the media comments from this time are worth noting. John Major, Prime Minister: an unfortunate result. There's no place in our society for those sort of policies. Michael Howard: I deplore the election of any candidate who doesn't recognise that all sections of our community have equal rights under the law. Obviously, it didn't apply to us. Archbishop of Canterbury, he's not going to be left out, is he? Evil policies undermine the peace and stability of democracy. Metropolitan Police Commissioner Paul Condom, civil servant, by the way, shouldn't have opinion. You should keep them to yourself. Unbiased. It should be fair. He condemned our result. This gem from John Gummer, who used to be chairman of the Conservative Party, a thoroughly repellent creature. If you want the authentic face of 20th century liberalism, have a look at John Gummer. He really went into it. He went, a thoroughly nasty party, not part of the normal democratic life, not a party that honest or responsible people can support. I very much deplore the fact that people voted for it. Please note, peasants, don't vote for your survival, don't fight back, don't do anything at all. Listen to the words of John Gummer. Daily Mail: Derek Beackon has thrown a hand grenade into British politics. Simon Hughes, a fascinating character, Lib Dem MP for Bermondsey. True democracy will only be restored when that the BNP are defeated in the mayor elections, and that man, our friend, is removed from public office. And my favourite one of all was a character called Colin Baker. You'd have to be a certain age to remember him. He was a big, fat, horrible journalist who'd done various hatchet jobs on nationalism over the years. And he was talking to John Suchet on ITN. It was 8:30 in the morning the following day after the election, with a mean face. All he said in his report was the highest racial attacks in the UK are in Tower Hamlets. Only 4,371 people bothered to vote. They only won by 7 votes. Turnout less than 44% for a council election. That's incredible, 44%. It's quite, normally, I mean, I stood in council in this May. There's about 18% people voted. So, you know, that is an incredible result. His final words, if people wanted change, they could have stood as independents. And then he looked at the camera with grim visage and says, so the result stands. Absolutely dripping with hatred for us. Endless TV programmes riddled with liberal left venom and endless bias. Our little rebellion in East London not just frightened the establishment, but I think it terrorised them. Our victory was legal, clean and honest. It was diplomatic, it was democratic. We did it by the book, with the rules written by them. The state showed how spiteful they could be on the night of Derek's election victory, because I booked a pub for a social, and it was just for us to celebrate, you know, our victory, or whether we got 20% or whatever we did. And there was about 15 of us in there, all, you know, good nationalist characters, and a senior, and I mean senior police officer turned up, who was probably either a commander or a deputy assistant commissioner, with 30 of his finest, itching for a fight with us, and told the landlady of the pub, I won't quote the words he used because there's ladies present, but it was very foul language. He told the lady of the pub, you're never going to run a pub again if you serve these people. And she stood her ground for about 10 minutes, and in the end she backed down. I can understand that. I wouldn't hold it against the lady anyway. I was desperate for a pint. Myself and Mr. Butler had been out all day. I just wanted to have that first pint. I really savouring that pint. And the same senior police officer walked up to me, truncheon in my face, and said, if you touch that, you diminutive creature, you'll be in the back of the van being rolled around. That was 1 hour after we won. Something really got up them. They didn't like it and they wanted to teach us a lesson. But to some extent, I think they panicked. Further on the Sunday after Brick Lane, where the BNP used to have like regular paper sales, there was a fracas outside a pub. You know, those things used to happen quite a lot in those days. And one thing that we do remember from that time, because there's a little pub we used to use in the middle of Bethnal Green Road, was some of us heard a policeman's radio going, get Beacon, get Beacon. What they wanted to do was nick our friend and get him arrested 2 days after he'd been elected to make us look bad. That, again, that shows their spite. Amazing, really, because there was a telephone poll in the local paper called the East London Advertiser. And it's quite a well-read paper then. It might be a little bit different now. Before the poll, the party chairman, John Tyndall, was in a debate with a senior police officer. He was complaining about the antics of the Anti-Nazi League at Brick Lane. And the copper, who wasn't in the least bit friendly towards us, said, well, you people are not wanted in that area anyway. Which is rather ironic, because we just won an election. In the previous general election, we got 2,500 votes. We had thousands of supporters. We was clearly very, very popular. But in the East London Advertiser, there was a phone poll and it had a very straightforward question. No mucking about, it just said, do you think it's a good idea that a BNP candidate is elected to Tower Hamlets Council? Yes, no. And 81.7% of people who voted said yes, we think it's a good thing. So for that ridiculous policeman, who was clearly under orders, to say that we're not wanted in that area was self-evidently preposterous. But it reminds me of G.K. Chesterton's poem, The Secret People. Smile at us, pay us, pass us, but do not quite forget, for we are the people of England that have not spoken yet. The system panicked in September 93. They could have ignored the result and waited till the seat was up for election, but no. They, the media, the police, the politicians went into a collective spasm of mass anxiety, but that also shows fear, because they know deep down what they've done to us. And they know that at some stage there becomes some kind of political or legal retribution. They know fully well what they've done to us. And also with that election victory, it proves that our political masters are not gods. They make mistakes, they can be politically beaten, they can be fought and defeated. The Liberal snobs of the media were disdainful of our comrade Derek. They viewed him as a working class stereotype, bigot, reactionary, Alf Garnett, in our political work. The essential prerequisites are first and foremost political courage, physical courage and psychological courage, and Derek had them in abundance. And also for 8 months afterwards he'd done excellent work looking after the people of the Isle of Dogs, certainly better than anything that Lib, Lab or Con could ever come up with. And also when Derek lost his seat, the polling was 67%, which is astonishing, again, for a local election. Just before that election, again, showing the spite of the Liberal state, there was 2 comments by the late Paddy Ashdown, leader of the Liberal Party. It must be the first priority of every democratic party to ensure the BNP is stamped out where it's gained a toehold on the Isle of Dogs. The late John Smith, the Labour Party. We will fight to make sure that the BNP is defeated in Tower Hamlets and anywhere else it dares to raise its ugly head. Our friend, erudite Cockney, is infinitely superior to anything they could come up with. And also it took the entire weight of the London Labour Party to make sure that we was defeated. What of now? There's issues that won't go away, and never will we, in my honest opinion. The natural heir, I'm biased in this respect, to the old NF, to the old BNP, is the British Democrat Party, which I'm part of. We scored a small success last year where we had a little by-election victory in Basildon, and obviously Julian, even though he lost his seat, still got a very good vote. It proves that we're still in business. I'd just like to quote from an article I wrote for Candor magazine, which is an old established nationalist magazine, talking about these things and what they relate to. The system establishment, very powerful, multifaceted, seemingly omnipotent, can be politically beaten. Not all in one attempt, but in small encounters where we have chosen suitable ground for us and performed solid work in a selected area. We realistically lost the seat on the day that we won it because the system, who was infinitely more powerful than us, was determined to get it back. We had, as my colleague Mr Butler might elaborate a little bit more afterwards, we had all sorts of dirty tricks. We had red violence, we had infiltrators, we had created political factionalism, police pressure and media lies as well. And obviously floating voters changed their minds, lapsed or lazy Labour voters returned. We lost, but paradoxically we won as well. And also what was great about it, bearing in mind what the limited resources that we started out with 4 or 5 years before, a small group of brave, dedicated people with limited resources facing all manner of media opprobrium, legal obstruction, real physical danger, showed odds can be overcome and victory attained. Maybe a future nationalist will review our warning messages and ponder why, how we placed ourselves on the brink of total and irreversible destruction. Then a pleasing thought. Heroes, yes, heroes will return, not just a grand traditional variety, but heroes of past fame. Ordinary people, little people, first in their hundreds, then thousands, then millions, almost becoming a new tribe and over time recreating and rebuilding what we lost. High ideals and practical strategies can save us, and ultimately reinforced by the desperate courage we saw on election night in 1993, saw on the faces of a people dismissed, degraded and despised, who still have the faith and will to survive. People like them deserve to win, and they will. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve, very much. I think 30 years ago today, or as it was Thursday or Friday morning, I think it was an iconic moment, wasn't it, for everyone? Sort of maybe akin to, you know, the JFK assassination. We all knew where we were when Derek got elected. It was such an inspirational moment for lifelong nationalists who'd been, you know, pounding the streets for decades, waiting for that moment, and it was so inspirational. And you know, I'm proud to be a friend of Derek's and have been for many years. The second speaker we have tonight is Eddy Butler. Many people know Eddy. He was behind many of the by-election victories and election victories that the BNP had, starting off in 1993 and then on into the 2000s. So please welcome Eddy Butler.
Thank you, Chris. I'll just show you a few. I passed around some booklets with some of our campaign details from Tower Hamlets. This is the one actually that's got the Derek's campaign in. I'll just show you a couple of things which I found, which are from an earlier time, which are quite rare. Does anyone remember this poster? that one, which wouldn't be allowed now. It's from the 70s, actually before my time. It's, and this one is probably even more notorious. That one. And this one is probably the most notorious one of all. Yeah. He was a candidate in an earlier election. Anyway, which I'll come on to possibly. Anyway, I'll start off with a quote and I go through why we won and why we lost. The electors of Millwall, this is a quote from someone who some of you might recognise. The electors of Millwall did not back a postmodernist rightist party, but what they perceived to be a strong, disciplined organisation with the ability to back up its slogan, Defend Rights of Whites, with well-directed boots and fists. When the crunch comes, power is the product of force and will, not of rational debate. Anyway, now there were two factors which led to our victory in the East End, which is the Borough of Tower Hamlets. That those of you who don't know, the Borough of Tower Hamlets is the East End of London. And the first was an increasing sophistication in our electoral tactics. We were constantly experimenting, learning and copying, mainly actually from the local Liberal Democrats who went under the name Liberal Focus, who were very practiced electoral techniques. And in Tower Hamlets, they ran local issue campaigning with dog whistle, racist sloganeering and issues that they ran. And they got into quite a lot of trouble for this, but they ran pretty hardline racial type campaigning, believe it or not. There was a Liberal Democrats. They progressed from 0 councillors in 1974 to controlling the borough in 1986. Initially we ran, and this wasn't just us, it was everyone in nationalism in those days, in the 80s. We ran election campaigns to hold public election meetings, because you're allowed to have a public election meeting when you have a candidate, basically so we could have a rally, and we would want there to be trouble, so we'd get publicity. That was actually the reason why we did these things. And that sort of thinking dominated nationalist tactics really from the 70s until the early 90s. But a strategy more designed to alienate the public couldn't really be imagined. And the transformation away from that took quite a long time, because it was ingrained in all of our thinking that we wanted to do that sort of thing. Not only did we alienate the public, we also recruited members who liked that sort of activity, who weren't the best type of people for knocking on doors and campaigning politically. We recruited mostly young geezer types who liked boozing, and not all, but a lot of the membership were like that, and getting involved in aggro and high adrenaline events. We as a branch in Tower Hamlets organised a lot of events of that nature, and our ranks were swelled, and we had a lot of hangers-on associated with us who liked that sort of activities. We were good at organising those high adrenaline events. We did lots of them. My first electoral outing under the National Front was in 1984 with Steve. He wasn't the candidate on this one. It was a by-election in Bethnal Green. We did some good local issue campaigning. The council, we couldn't get a school, which you usually get for public election meetings, because they said they were all booked with events. They let us have Bethnal Green Town Hall, but only for a private meeting, because having Bethnal Green Town Hall, which is a nice building, might be prestigious, but it was a private meeting. And so we thought, they let us have it, and then we thought afterwards, that isn't really what we want. We don't really want a private meeting that we couldn't advertise in Bethnal Green Town Hall. So basically, we grassed ourselves up to the Hackney Gazette, or he did, and said, oh, these fascists, they're having a meeting in Bethnal Green Town Hall. They got in touch with Tower Hamlets Council. They cancelled the meeting. Oh, it's disgraceful, we've had our meeting cancelled. We got quite a lot of publicity from it, and we held a street rally in the ward instead. We publicised it quite a lot. I've got in one of these folders, there's the stuff about this. We publicised it quite a lot. Right in the middle of the ward, we had placards and flags and everything. Lots of voters could see us from their balconies and stuff. The Reds didn't turn up, so we were a bit disappointed for that, because we publicised it a lot that we were doing it. They didn't turn up, but we still got a bit of publicity out of it, and we were seen by the electors. But that was the sort of thing we would do. We would try and provoke situations to get publicity. And as I say, there are other examples of similar type things we did in one of the booklets which is floating about. Anyway, soon after that, I won't go into why, the whys and wherefores. I defected from the NF to the BNP. The branch came over and we all joined the BNP. That was in 1986. In the late 80s, we had a number of other activities. We were always interested in fighting elections. We were always trying to improve our technique. We went through several different things. Should we try and do this? Should we try and do that? And we're always well practiced in door-to-door canvassing, which is a key to this, door-to-door canvassing. When I first joined the branch, I was young, and Steve, believe it or not, he's younger than me. You wouldn't think it, would you? But but when we joined, our organiser then was an insurance salesman, door-to-door insurance salesman, and he made us go canvassing. And when you first joined, he said, right, what we're doing is canvassing. You don't question it, you just go and do it because you've been told what to do. And it sort of demystified it for us. So we never had a problem with canvassing. Lots of people in the party have always got a problem with canvassing or knocking on doors. They're shy. Well, what are they going to say? What's going to happen? Luckily for the likes of me and Steve, from the word go, we were taught canvassing when we were quite young. And by this guy who was a door-to-door insurance salesman. I've got some of his leaflets I think it's in that book. They were really appalling leaflets, actually. And the technique that he tried to make a spiel, we had this spiel we had to stick to rigidly, his equivalent of an insurance salesman spiel. We had to stick to his script, and it was quite appalling. But we weren't scared of canvassing because of him, actually. We were canvassing, we were fighting a lot of elections. The big turning point was in 1990 when a local kid called John Stoner in a school in Bethnal Green was stabbed up in a classroom by a load of Bengalis. Tower Hamlets, the immigrants, then and now mostly Bangladeshis. And he was stabbed up by some Bangladeshis. And his foster family led a protest march from where they lived to Bethnal Green Police Station, and hundreds of people turned up, and quite a lot of us went along to see what was going on. And it was quite impressive. There was hundreds of people on this march. They're all singing "Knees Up Mother Brown." They didn't really know about politics, and their main expression was to go outside the police station, loads of people jumping up and down singing "Knees Up Mother Brown." That was a sort of that was what East End people did, I suppose, in those days, wasn't it? They couldn't think of anything else to do. And afterwards, I chatted to Richard Edmonds about it and said, what should we do? We've got to try and capitalise on this. And that's what led to the Rights Whites campaign. We started doing our own leaflets. You can see them in I don't know which booklet it's in, but is it that one? Okay. The Rights to Whites ones, I think, are in that one. I think they're probably in that one. Yeah. If you look at that one, that's actually a professional looking one. But we mostly use marker pen. So we do the headline in marker pen. Have you got one with a marker pen there? They look a bit rubbish. You'd think, oh, that's rubbish, not professional. They look like they're done by a local person. It's a local grassroots campaign. And the unprofessional look and feel of the leaflet was virtually all their main part of their appeal. And we used to turn out Rights to Whites campaign leaflets on a whole range of issues. We had 2 marches. The other important thing is, when you're campaigning like that, it gives you legitimacy in the eyes of the police and the press and all the authorities. You'll think, we're claiming rights and all this sort of thing. It's what they're used to. They know they can handle that. It's part of their playbook. And So we could get marches, we could get rallies, we got York Hall, which is the main venue in Tower Hamlets, a major international boxing venue. We had it 3 times, and we could virtually do what we liked, because we're saying, oh, we're claiming our rights, a bit like Martin Luther King or something like that, or Gandhi. And lots of people on our side said, you know, we don't have to claim rights with indigenous people. We have our rights and all this sort of thing. They sort of totally think, some people totally didn't get it, that we're actually, politics is about doing what you can do to get power, not sticking to some sort of ideological principle. Ideologically speaking, on a very theoretical level, saying rights are whites might seem weak and all that sort of stuff, but actually it gave us legitimacy, allowed us to do what we liked in all across Tower Hamlets. And they say, well, we don't want to be second-class citizens. We want equal shares. No, we want an equal share with the indigenous people. That's irrelevant. We got what we wanted. We mobilised the people in Tower Hamlets. So in the early 90s, that was what we were doing. We were doing loads of rights for whites demos. There was also a load of by-elections that took place. The first one, Steve was the candidate, that poster I showed you in Park Ward, where we did quite good canvassing. We were getting more and more systematic in how we were doing canvassing. We got a half-decent result. It was an area in Bow, which in those days we never used to touch Bow because it was a Liberal stronghold. And we never used to really go there, but we used to mostly do Bethnal Green initially. And we did this campaign in Bow. We did pretty decent. Steve actually lived in Bow. We still had public meetings, public election meetings. That was in a school. I've got the stuff's in one of these folders. After that, we had another by-election. They had one after another by-election. The candidate was a guy called Ken Walsh, who was one of our key activists in Bethnal Green, a ward, the same ward that we'd stood in 1984 actually. And again, we did a more sophisticated campaign. We got even more votes. Again, we had a public election meeting. Then we had another by-election in Spitalfields. Spitalfields is what is now called Bangortown. They actually call the ward Bangortown now, because it's like 90% Bengali. It was about 90% Bengali then, and we only contested it so we could have a public election meeting, which did cause a bit of a mayhem. But we were still in that mode. We hadn't sort of transformed ourselves properly. We're still half doing sophisticated campaigns, half doing rights for whites type demos, which were appealing to the mainstream support base in Tower Hamlets. But we were still wedded to the idea of doing public election meetings with the one intention, believe me, the one intention of there being aggro. That was frankly, that was the reason we did it, because we couldn't. That was a very strong mindset in those days. After that, we're coming to 1992 now, and the Spitalfields election was followed by one on the Isle of Dogs, Millwall. Millwall is the part of the River Thames that loops down. If you see it on EastEnders or something, it's a big loop. It's called the Isle of Dogs. The ward is called Millwall because it's Millwall. It's not where the football ground is, but it was where the football ground was originally before they moved south of the river. And it's a loop. It's like an isolated community. I lived there briefly in the early 80s when I was a student, and there was 2 buses that went there. There was no trains. It was before Canary Wharf was built. When this election took place, Canary Wharf, I think, had just been built, but all these Docklands developments hadn't happened. It was still an isolated community of people who thought they were islanders and all this sort of thing. And actually, we'd done a Rights for Whites a small Rights for Whites campaign there a couple of years before. And someone said to us, we don't need you here because we're all right here. We don't need you lot here because we haven't got any here. They were just starting to come in. The Bengalis were starting to come in. And as everyone here probably knows, it happens extremely quickly. When it comes on top, they move in quick. The same thing happened in Barking and Dagenham or every area of London where it's happened. It happens very quickly. And from thinking there was no problem for them, within 2 years there was a problem. Or probably about a year there was a problem, and we had a by-election. This was the election was in October 1992. The candidate was a guy called Barry Osborne. And we ran a good campaign. We got 20%, which we thought was unbelievable. It was one of the best. It was probably the best election result anyone had had in our side of the fence since probably about 1978, when the National Front was near enough at its peak. So we thought 20%, and everyone's going 20%, yeah. There were our people used to chant 20%, 20% Isle of Dogs and things like that, thinking it was brilliant. 20%. We hadn't won, obviously. We come third, but thought it was unbelievable. We got 20%. But I said to Richard Edmonds, who was a key figure also in all of this, afterwards I said, look, if we had actually the Isle of Dogs has got lots of entry phone flats in there that are difficult to canvass. I said to Richard, look, if we had done this more systematically, we could have won that one actually. He says, yeah, you know. So anyway, in the interim, we set up a paper round. We used to sell papers door to door. That one, not necessarily this issue. Can I just have it? Yes. The British Nationalist, which was the party newspaper at the time. We had a good sales round, mostly in Bethnal Green, but we set one up in on the Isle of Dogs from our canvas returns for the yeses and possibles. We went round afterwards, and we had I don't know, it was a couple of hundred, wasn't it, Steve?
250, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
November 92.
Yeah, so we sold about 250 newspapers, and then what happens? Another count. I can't remember whether did they die?
No, he never turned up for election meetings.
Oh, all right. Didn't die then.
No, he didn't die.
Never mind.
He was councillor.
Anyway, so there's another vacancy, and Steve's got a bloody photographic mind on a lot of these things. Photographic memory, not that photographic mind. And so we've got another by-election comes up. This time we select Derek as the candidate, and so obviously we've got a big advantage. We've just got 20%. We've established a paper round that we've probably sold them 8 issues of British Nationalists to these people over not quite a year. And we'd also developed more, we'd got stronger in the intervening period. So we put in a much better campaign. We did much more systematic campaigning, better leaflets. Our leaflet designs were getting better. We still wrapped around the rights of whites issues. We knew everything that was going on. There was one big issue. Do you remember Mast House Terrace? There was a block of flats, a new block of flats called Mast House Terrace that a lot of Bengalis were given, the flats in this Mast House Terrace, and it caused sort of outrage because they used to turn up in old dilapidated vans with dirty old mattresses and sort of pile in there with all their stuff, and everyone could see them going, oh, they got all the nice flats, they got all the nice new flats. It caused uproar. So we knew all the issues. There was trouble in the local school called George Green School, because they start getting in the school, they start getting aggressive with our kids in the schools. There was issues here, there, and everywhere on the Isle of Dogs, and we knew everything that was going on. So we could talk authoritatively in our leaflets about everything. We were right ingrained within the community by then. The key to this sort of thing is if you develop this sort of campaigning, you become effectively a mass movement in one area. You're not a mass movement in the entire country, but in that area, as far as things go, you're a mass movement because you've got lots of support within that area. You know everything that's going on. You've got lots of different contacts. You know people. Derek had family there. Sue had family there. And you know people everywhere, and you know what's going on. You become a mass movement. I say you become a mass movement in a small area. So, and we ran a very good campaign, and of course we won. We kind of thought we were going to, although it was very close, 7 votes was it? We kind of thought we were going to win anyway because the vibe was there. Although we weren't used to the vibe. I've done lots of campaigns since then when we've won and not won. And I can recognise the vibe now, so it was new to us then. But I kind of thought we were going to win because the vibe told us we were going to win. There was lots of support, and of course we did win. And as Steve said, it caused shockwaves around the country. And I said the key to it was one of the other key things is the BNP. Then Steve sort of did touch on this. we were a bit of an unknown quantity. We created the image that we wanted the public to see and understand, that we determined it. We weren't in the papers all the time. We weren't that well known. People would say, "Oh, you're not like the National Front, are you?" And we'd say, "Oh, no. We're much nicer than them." Whereas actually, the truth be told, the internal ideological profile of the BNP was quite a lot hardline than the National Front in those days. The National Front was going through a phase when it was quite comparatively moderate, if you want to call it that. And we were actually quite a lot more hardline about the internal dynamics of the party behind the scenes. But we'd say, "Oh no, we're not their trouble. We're nothing like them. We're the nice guys" type thing. So we could generate our own image to the people. It's no different from what any other party does, if you actually. But we were able to generate our own image, which was another factor in our victory. That's essentially how we won. The whole thing didn't go on from there for many reasons, but that's how and why we won. And if you want to have a lesson for any movement of there's nothing going on at the moment much. I know you've got the British Democratic Party and so forth, but if you want a lesson for how we're going to win in the future, that's the blueprint. And virtually every seat we did win subsequent to that was kind of similar to that anyway. All right, thank you very much.
I want to give our last speaker a really special welcome. She's come a very long way to speak here tonight. I'm hoping very much that Mark and Laura carry on the baton that we set up, and hopefully somebody's going to take this on and give the British people some inspiration and something to hang on to. So please give a really, really warm welcome to the Patriotic Alternative's Deputy Leader, Laura Towler.
Okay, good evening everybody. I'd like to begin today by thanking the organisers of this event for inviting me and my husband Sam this evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Laura Towler and I am a Yorkshire lass, as you can probably tell from my accent. I'm also the Deputy Leader of Patriotic Alternative. We're a British advocacy group and we're currently one of the largest and most active nationalist organisations in the country. So I was invited here this evening by Jane, who asked me to give a speech, and when she asked me to give a speech I said, "Is it not a bit cheeky, me giving a speech at an event like this? I'm not sure that I'm qualified to give a speech at an event like this. I can't talk about what was happening 30 years ago or reminisce about the good times because I wasn't there." I've been involved in nationalist politics for about 4 years. So that's 4 years of leafleting and canvassing and surveying the public, doing flash demos, street protests, getting up on homemade scaffolding stages and screaming down a megaphone. But I've only been involved for about 4 years. You could add another 4 years on top of that if you count the online work that I did, so writing articles for publications such as Countercurrents, creating YouTube videos and trying to raise awareness about certain issues and trying to wake up as many people as possible. But if we look at actual IRL politics, I've only been involved for 4 years. There are people in this room who've been involved in politics longer than I've been alive. And when Derek won his seat 30 years ago, I was just about born. So I said to Jane, I feel a bit cheeky giving a speech at an event like this, but she told me to shut up and stop being daft. So here I am giving a speech tonight. And I've chose to talk about a topic which I think is a good topic for this room because there are a variety of organisations and individuals in this room. So I've decided to talk about nationalist unity and the need for us to work together. So this is a hard pill to swallow, but the number one thing that hinders the success and growth of nationalism in this country isn't the establishment, it isn't the government, it isn't counter-terrorism or anti-white organisations like Hope Not Hate, it isn't the media or so-called academics. The number one thing that hinders the success and growth of nationalism in this country is us, it's nationalists. The right is so divided in Britain. There are so many separate organisations and individuals doing their own thing. And it's fine for organisations to do their own thing and for people to be good at different things. But instead of working in unity together and alongside each other, or even just ignoring each other and letting people get on with things, there are so many fallings out and there's so much sniping. The left are so much better at being unified than we are. They disagree on a lot of things, believe me, especially issues of gender. You know, there's a big debate in feminism now about whether men can be women and whether they should be included or not. But when it comes to it, you can guarantee that they'll be united. If Patriotic Alternative hold a protest, all of the different left-wing factions will be there, unified, all stood alongside each other and all focused on the same goal for the day. That goal is usually shouting nonsense at us, but they are unified and that's the point. In a way, you could say that nationalists hold ourselves to higher standards than the left. Typically, left-wing ideology has a big focus on equality, whereas we have more of a focus on striving for greater glory and, you know, greater paths in the future. Perhaps this is why we often find ourselves picking fault at small things. But we need to stop seeing other nationalists as individuals that we need to do better than, and instead teammates on the same side. After all, their victories are our victories. The journey that we're on is a long, difficult one. Nationalists today have a very important duty, especially any young nationalists that we have with us. That duty is to carry a flame that has been carried by many great men and women before us. Obviously, we're celebrating Derek tonight. People like John Tyndall as well, Jonathan Bowden and my personal hero, Sir Oswald Mosley. They all did this before us and now it's our job to carry it on. A great nationalist will always remain focused on the end goal. They will always conduct themselves with dignity and decorum. Before ever doing or saying anything publicly, they will always ask themselves, is this good for nationalism or bad for nationalism? And how do my actions reflect on our movement? We have so many enemies already and so many powerful organisations against us. What our people face today and the country that our children will grow up in, if we don't win, doesn't even bear thinking about. We simply cannot afford to lose. Now, this doesn't mean that we shouldn't have standards. Personally, I'd draw the line at working with anybody who has doxed anybody or anybody who turns out to be an informant. A doxer is obviously somebody who shares personal information about somebody online, their name, address, photo, with the intention of causing that person harm. And an informant is obviously somebody who passes information to the state or the Reds or the media, etc. I'm sorry to say that I've encountered nationalists, or those pertaining to be nationalists, who have done both of these things. These people should be cast out because for us to entertain these people or to platform these people is for us to validate them and their actions. And we have a duty to keep our colleagues and supporters safe. To summarise, there is nobody worse than a traitor. Thankfully, most nationalist falling outs don't fall into this category. It's just a clash of egos or a slight disagreement about ideology that seems to be a massive thing online. So I'd like to make an appeal today for all nationalists and patriots to follow a few simple rules. Always be aware that you are representing nationalism at all times. Everything you do publicly is watched by our enemies. Any little crumb that you give them is ammunition that they will use to attack us. Next, if you have a problem with somebody, call them. Don't post about it publicly. Infighting makes us look weak. If you disagree with somebody's tactics, instead of dedicating your time towards moaning about this person or group, create something better yourself. If another nationalist or another organisation does something good, swallow your pride and congratulate them. If you can't do that, say nothing. And be open to having an honest dialogue with and working with and supporting with other individuals and groups that have a shared goal. United we stand, divided we fall. The only way we have any chance of replicating the successes of nationalists from the past, in a country today that's probably in a worse state than it's ever been, is by having an unprecedented show of unity across the nationalist ranks. There are many in this room who have done great things and shown us that it can be done. The British people want what we're offering, but they also demand strength, competency and professionalism. So earlier this year, I was invited to a nationalist unity meeting that was organised by the Independent Nationalist Network. I'm sure it's fine to say that Dr. Jim Luthwaite was also there representing the British Democrats. I was there representing Patriotic Alternative with my husband Sam, Mark Collett and Joe Marsh. Everybody there understood the power that a unified front offers. And everybody who attended that meeting and stayed for that meeting has kept our pact to work together and to sort out any disagreements behind the scenes. Not only is this something that the public want, when we announced this meeting we got a load of excitement and enthusiasm from our supporters and our activists, but it's also something that our enemies noticed too. Hope Not Hate wrote an article about it saying that it was a cause for concern and something that they need to keep an eye on. And if nationalist unity makes anti-whites respond in such a panicky manner, that should tell you that it's exactly what we should be doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Laura won't know this, but myself and Tony were running meetings for many years, and I'm sure people that go to those meetings, like Tess, know that I've been calling for nationalist unity for many, many years. So all it leaves me to do is to really thank everyone for coming. You've given up your time. It's been great to see people I haven't seen for a few years. Let's try and keep in touch a bit more as we go forward. But finally, I don't know if there's any booze left in your glasses or any water. A toast to Derek Beackon, who gave us so much hope 30 years ago. Derek Beackon.